The car that caused a rift in my relationship with my dad was one that I had long dreamed of owning. Growing up, my father was the best mechanic in town, known for his uncanny ability to breathe life back into broken vehicles. To me, he was nothing short of a magician. I idolized him not just as a father but as a master of his craft. The garage felt like a second home, filled with the familiar scent of motor oil and rubber. I cherished the sounds of tools clanking and engines roaring, which resonated with the joy and passion that surrounded my father's work. Among all the vehicles my dad had worked on, there was one car that held a special place in our family's history, a black Chevrolet SS, which my grandfather had bought for my dad when he was just 17. This car was my dad's pride and joy, and he would often regale me with stories of how he meticulously restored it, tweaking every detail to perfection. By the time I was a child, the car had already become a legend in our family. My dad would take me for rides in it, and I can still recall the exhilaration I felt as we sped down winding back roads. I remember clinging to the edges of the seat, heart racing as the speedometer climbed higher and higher. When I was just 10 years old, my dad made a promise that would shape my childhood aspirations. One Saturday afternoon, while we were in his garage polishing the Chevrolet, he leaned down to me, wiping his hands on a rag, and said, "You know, if you keep up your grades and work hard, this car will be yours one day." In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride and closeness to him. It wasn't just about the car, it was about the bond we shared and the legacy of our family's love for automobiles. Motivated by that promise, I dedicated myself to my studies and tried to stay out of trouble, all while dreaming of the day I would finally inherit the Chevrolet. I envisioned working side by side with my dad in the shop, continuing the family tradition that had been passed down through generations. The car represented not just a prized possession but a profound connection between us, an embodiment of my father's love and the memories we had built together. However, when I was 12, my life took a significant turn. My mom remarried, and we moved to another state. The transition was challenging, and I found myself distant from my father and the shop that had been my sanctuary. As the distance grew, so did the gaps in our communication. I held on to the promise of the car, convinced that I would always be his son and that one day it would be mine. By the time I turned 16 and started university, my schedule became increasingly hectic. Balancing my studies with a part-time job made it difficult to keep in touch with my dad. I figured he was busy at the shop too, and the calls home became less frequent. I never meant for our relationship to suffer. I believed we would have time to reconnect. I envisioned our bond strengthening as it had in the past, but life had other plans. Then came the day that irrevocably changed everything. It was April 2019, a day that will forever be etched in my memory. I received a text from my dad that shocked me to my core. Attached was a photo of my stepmother, grinning broadly, standing in front of the Chevrolet. The car looked stunning, its polished exterior gleaming in the sunlight. My heart sank as I read the caption, "Happy 16th birthday, kid. Hope you enjoy the ride." In that moment, everything I had believed about our relationship shattered. The promise of the car, my childhood dream, had been handed over to someone else, and I felt an overwhelming wave of betrayal wash over me. The very symbol of my father's love, the car that I had envisioned as my inheritance, was now no longer mine. It was a bitter reminder of how quickly things can change and how the distance between us had grown into an insurmountable chasm. The rift that had formed in our relationship was no longer just about the car. It was a reflection of the time we had lost, the bonds that had frayed, and the dreams that felt like they were slipping away forever. I immediately called my dad, my heart racing as the anger swelled inside me. He picked up the phone almost instantly, his voice cheerful and light as if nothing was amiss. Without even exchanging greetings, I blurted out, "Is this a joke?" There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear the confusion in his voice when he replied, "No, why?" That was when the floodgates opened. I felt the frustration and hurt I had bottled up for years rising to the surface. "You promised me that car," I yelled, my voice trembling with emotion. You told me that if I kept my grades up, it would be mine." As the words spilled out, I realized I was unleashing years of pent-up resentment. I accused him of being a liar and claimed that he didn't care about his real son anymore. My accusations hung heavy in the air, fueled by the pain of feeling neglected and overlooked. And then he retaliated. I can still remember his words vividly. "You don't deserve that car," he spat back at me. "Maybe if you changed your attitude, things would be different." With that, he hung up, leaving me standing there, phone in hand, shaking with anger and disbelief. At that moment, I felt utterly crushed. My own father had just told me I wasn't good enough, that I didn't deserve the very thing he had promised me, a symbol of our relationship that I had held on to for so long. That night, I made a drastic decision. I changed my phone number, deleted all my social media accounts, and cut him out of my life completely. If he didn't want me around, then fine. I would forge my own path without him. But deep down, the truth was that it hurt more than I could ever articulate. Months later, I graduated from university, achieving recognition as one of the top students in my class. I had followed in my father's footsteps, becoming an automotive service technician, but he wasn't there to witness it. He didn't even know I had graduated. My mom told me he wasn't invited to the ceremony. At that point, I convinced myself that I didn't care. I had accomplished this milestone on my own, and I was determined to keep moving forward. Yet, despite my success, the pain never fully subsided. Fast forward a year, and I found myself working at a large automotive manufacturer, doing exceptionally well. On the surface, everything appeared fine, but there was a constant emptiness, a lingering ache I couldn't shake. Each time I thought about the Chevrolet, the shop, or the future I had envisioned with my dad, it felt like a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of what I had lost. Then one day, on a whim, I decided to send him a package. I'm not entirely sure what motivated me. Maybe I was seeking closure or hoping he would finally understand how much he had hurt me. In the box, I included the old toy car he had given me when I was a child, one that closely resembled his beloved Chevrolet. I also included a photo of the two of us from years ago, taken while we were sitting on the hood of that very car. However, in a moment of mixed emotions, I tore the picture in half before placing it in the box. The final item I included was a videotape from when I was about 7 years old. It captured footage of my dad and me working together in the garage. I remembered how I had filmed him while he worked on the Chevrolet, and in one part of the video, he said, "If you keep up your grades, this shop and this car will be yours one day." I hoped that revisiting those memories would resonate with him. I never received a response from him, and I hadn't expected one. I wonder what he thought when he opened the package. Did he feel regret? Did he reflect on our relationship and the promises made? Ultimately, it didn't matter. For me, that package represented the closing of a chapter. I had made peace with the reality that I would never own that car or have the relationship with my dad I had always envisioned. I was determined to build a life of my own, one that didn't include him. But even as I moved forward, deep down, I couldn't help but wonder what might have been. What if things had turned out differently? What if he had kept his promise? Would we still be close? Would I be working alongside him in the shop, fixing cars and sharing life lessons like we used to? Those questions lingered, haunting me with possibilities that would never come to fruition. I realized that some wounds never truly heal, and the ache of lost dreams would always be a part of my